All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jess Langer. My pronouns are she, they, and by way of physical description, I am a young Caucasian woman with brown hair and green frames wearing a cream-colored quarter zip. I'm joined today by my colleague Brenda Schaefer-Pellinen with the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging. We'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us for today's session on Managing Money, Caregiver's Guide to Finances. Before we start, we'll just share a few housekeeping items. And next slide, Sam. We are excited to announce that today's webinar will be accessible to a wider audience. We have arranged for American Sign Language ASL interpreters who will be present throughout the session. These interpreters will rotate every 15 minutes, ensuring that everyone can follow the content effectively. Additionally, we are recording the entire webinar with ASL interpretation. The recordings will be available on our YouTube channel for later viewing. Whether you attend the live session or catch up later, you'll have the opportunity to engage with the material in a way that suits your needs. I encourage you to subscribe to our channel so you can keep up with the latest additions to our video library. We are always looking for suggestions for future webinar topics, so if you have suggestions for a topic or a speaker, feel free to send those to me at my email, which I will share in the chat in a second. Some technical housekeeping items. We ask that you please keep your microphone set to mute. Just a note, if you experience any issues with your bandwidth or audio quality, it often helps to disable your camera. If you'd like, you can enter your first name and organization or community that you're from in the chat box, what you're hoping to get out of today's session, and how you found out about our session. If you have any questions during today's session, please feel free to enter your question into the chat and we will follow up and get some responses from our presenter via email to all our registrants. At the close of today's session, you will see a quick evaluation of today's session pop up in your browser. Please take a moment and complete that survey. It helps us greatly when planning future sessions. One last quick reminder, visit our Facebook page for more information about other upcoming sessions and check out our website at arrowheadaging.org. You can also view our full schedule of upcoming webinars at arrowheadaging.org. And there is a section for classes, workshops, and trainings. A little bit about the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging. The Arrowhead Regional Development Commission is designated by the Minnesota Board on Aging as the Area Agency on Aging for the planning and service area under the authority of Title III of the Older Americans Act. The Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging, otherwise known as the Quad A, is committed to helping other older adults maintain their highest level of independence. Area agencies on aging are regional organizations that provide the services, supports, and information for just about everything that older adults and their families could need. Minnesota has 7 area agencies on aging across the state that are local connections to older Minnesotans and the community support they need as they age. The Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging's planning and service area, as designated by the Minnesota Board on Aging, includes the counties Aiken, Carlton, Cook, Itasca, Koochiching, Lake, and St. Louis. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to take a moment to read our Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging land acknowledgement. As we support our mission to help older adults maintain their highest level of independence, we do this while being respectful of the space we are being welcomed into by Indigenous people. We strive to deepen our understanding of the multiple ways in which people see and understand land and acknowledge the Indigenous people who have relationships with this land. We also acknowledge the decades of historical trauma, loss, and grief experienced by Indigenous people. It is our promise to not only recognize these truths, but also take action to show support of our Indigenous elders, neighbors, and friends. and understand our place within the past, present, and future of this land. We know this is just one step in recognizing and honoring the sovereignty of tribal nations. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide, thanks. Now I'm pleased to introduce our presenter for today's session, Sam Neumann, Financial Education Specialist and Financial Counselor at Northern Communities Credit Union. Sam is passionate about empowering people as they navigate their unique financial situations. Since 2022, she has worked with individuals and presented on various personal finance topics for people of all ages. Recently, Sam became a community educator with the Alzheimer's Association so she can help caregivers feel more confident when navigating the challenges that come from managing someone else's finances. Today's session is particularly timely as so many families are facing the complexities of managing finances for loved ones with Alzheimer's disease, dementia, or other chronic illnesses. Sam will share valuable insights on preparing for future care costs, tips for managing someone else's finances, and the critical importance of early planning. Sam, thank you for being here today to share your expertise with the community, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jess. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to be here today. I think that this is such an important topic that doesn't get talked about often enough. And I'm really excited to just kind of go over the financial aspects of caregiving, because I know it's a very, there's a lot to the role. So, breaking it down into this financial piece is really important. So today we are going to be going over quite a few different topics. Here's kind of an overview. I know that this kind of seems a little bit overwhelming just on paper here or on presentation, but again, like Jess said, this recording will be available to everyone, and you can always go back to it and utilize the chat for any questions, and we'll be sure to follow up. So, with that being said, let's get started going over the financial impacts of caregiving. I think this is a very important topic to, kind of start with because not only are you helping manage someone else's finances and want to be knowledgeable about, doing it in the exact, like, right way, but also understanding that there is a personal impact on caregivers' finances. And we'll kind of get to some statistics later on in the presentation of how many caregivers experience out-of-pocket expenses, as well as kind of the potential impacts on caregivers. So let's get into the potential impacts first. The first thing is that caregiving may affect employment. Many caregivers end up reducing hours, taking time off, retiring early, or quitting their jobs. This can definitely increase the amount of debt, making it hard to save for retirement or mean cutting back on other costs. Out-of-pocket expenses are also something caregivers experience, particularly like medical cost or increased living expenses. And with more expenses and sometimes less income, it's common to need to take on that debt, like we were talking about, to meet those financial needs. And that can put the caretaker into, a worse financial situation or even getting stuck in that cycle of debt. And the last thing that I just wanted to call awareness to isn't necessarily a direct financial topic, but caretaking can be stressful, as probably many of you know. And because of that stress and, prioritizing and juggling so many responsibilities, sometimes that can have a negative impact on your health or overall well-being, which can be expenses then for your own medical appointments or medications, that kind of thing. So definitely something to be aware of. As a caregiver, the best thing you can do for the person you are taking care of is to stay strong emotionally and physically. Make sure you're taking care of yourself by visiting the doctor regularly, eating well, and staying, physically active, looking for respite care or other services, and definitely accept help from others. which we'll get into a little bit more later on in the presentation as well. But that brings me to my next slide. So, according to the Alzheimer's Association, 78% of caregivers experience out-of-pocket costs as a result of caregiving. And when talking about memory loss and working with or taking care of an individual with Alzheimer's or memory loss, that can be even more expensive. So, looking at some unique challenges for dementia caregivers, they can experience twice the average out-of-pocket caregiving costs, just with all of the different expenses that add up. And 44% of caregivers experience anxiety, 30 to 40% of dementia caregivers experience depression, and women are more likely to experience the stress of caregiving, according to the Alzheimer's Association. And the reason why these statistics are important is kind of leading back to that last point of it having a negative impact on your overall well-being and making sure that you are taking care of yourself as well and filling up your cup so then you have the energy as a caregiver to then give to the people that you're taking care of. So now let's get into benefits of financial planning. So there's a lot of benefits to cover. We're going to break it down for the caregiver and then for the individual as well. So everyone can really benefit from putting financial plans in place, especially as early as possible, because having these conversations early on gives you the confidence that you know the person's wishes and you are able to make those decisions confidently. You're also able to, do a little bit more research, handle financial issues, and pay for care in an easier and less stressful way when you are planning in advance. And especially when, something unexpected happens, having that preparation in place beforehand is, less of a chance making it more costly or unwise decisions. A lot of times when something happens unexpectedly, you are acting from a place of emotions, and that can make you make kind of irrational decisions that you wouldn't otherwise make had you had more time to plan. For the individual, there is a lot of benefits there as well, especially in being able to participate in these conversations and help make decisions based on exactly what they want, and also get reassurance that others know their wishes and will follow them. Also, relief from having legal and financial plans in place. Again, it's just that big stress reliever there on both the caretaker, but also on the individual's part. They get peace of mind in order to, know that everything will be like managed in the way that they would like. So, when talking about memory loss on money management, I did not include like the phases of dementia or Alzheimer's, but especially in the beginning, people will start to have trouble managing their money or remembering to pay bills. Those are two of the red flags. And as the disease gets worse, it'll be more difficult to communicate wishes or make financial decisions on their own. So, early planning allows the person to participate in those decisions about finances and future care. And especially as a financial education specialist working at like a credit union, I see that like a lot of times it's really hard to have these conversations, especially the older generation. But I think most of us kind of were taught that money and the talking about it is kind of taboo, and it can really make people feel anxious or uncomfortable. And so that makes it really hard to know how to have this conversation or where to start. So let's talk about preparing for the financial discussion. Just like, early planning can be really helpful, just planning for these discussions in general can be really helpful as you navigate these conversations. The first thing that I always recommend is to write down the goals of the conversation. What kind of things do you want to accomplish, or what outcomes do you want to have from this conversation? Then make a list of what documents to review or discuss. There are a lot of resources out there in terms of checklists, and I did include one I sent to Brenda so she can send that out or have that available to everyone on the webinar right now. But that can be really helpful, is just kind of getting a list from somewhere and kind of going down to check to make sure that all of your ducks are in a row. And then include family members or close friends. So this one kind of depends on your own personal situation, your relationship with your loved one, especially we're trying to empower the individual and make a positive experience. And sometimes if you include, multiple people, they can feel ganged up on, or, it can devolve into a negative thing. They might get more uncomfortable. So if this is something that would be helpful to your situation, it definitely, is something to look into or chat about with your loved one, or you can fill them in afterwards. The other thing, especially for people dealing with dementia or memory loss, is to choose a calm time of day and a quiet place. So that way it doesn't get, too overwhelming. Usually when it comes to finances, again, there's a lot of that anxiety there, or, just wanting it to be private. So that's really important. And then one thing that can be really difficult, I know, even me talking about it to my mom or loved ones, like everyone is going to have their different ways of managing money. They're going to have different priorities and, values in terms of where they spend their money. That might be donations, that might be hobbies or interests. And the biggest thing that you can do is remain non-judgmental to build that trust. As a caretaker, this can be, again, kind of difficult. I know in counseling sessions, like everyone that I talk to has different priorities and values when it comes to money. And so the best thing, you can do is just remain open and use their wishes. I think that's important thing to remember, is it's for them and their money. And the other thing is, don't rush, take your time, especially when, you're going down the list of what documents to discuss, review. That's kind of a big conversation, especially if you have multiple things to go over. So if you don't get it to all of it in one day, that's totally okay. Um, but yeah, the other biggest thing is starting off positive. So let's take a look at some empowering ways that you can phrase it in order to bring it up productively. So, just saying something like, I respect your privacy, but it would give me peace of mind to know if you have financial plans in place so I can follow your wishes. Or have always admired the way you handle your finances. I want to learn more about what works well for you. I guess the biggest thing is to frame it in a way that you are there to help them, and that, you are just there as support for them and to empower them for, the future and getting everything on the right foot. And some of you may also be thinking about your own estate. I don't think anyone, everyone should be talking about or thinking about what they want to do with their own estate and financial wishes. But it can also be hard for you to bring up these conversations as well. So here's a couple of conversation starters, like, I want to talk with you about my finances so you can access them in case of an emergency. Or, I really want you to understand my wishes for the future. Let's talk about how I want my finances managed. And that's the thing here, is like, we aren't psychic, and we never know what's going to come in the future. So especially if you have dependents or assets, it can be really good to just kind of establish these plans, start talking about them with your loved ones, even writing things down. We'll get into the legal and financial documents here shortly, but just know that, while we're talking about helping someone else manage their money, it's also good to start thinking about your own. And some additional tips here is, definitely keep the person's best interests and wishes at heart and check in regularly. So, something that I see is that a lot of people want to have this conversation, get everything in place, and then just be done with it. But monitoring and adjusting the plan as needed can be really helpful for that continued confidence and peace of mind. Also, especially when you are taking care of an individual with that memory loss or dementia, using short sentences and pausing for understanding, or if, communication is difficult in general, that's just a good guide to follow. Also, try to end on a positive note. And if you need to, if it's getting negative or they're getting overwhelmed, just stopping the conversation and revisiting it later. This is going to be something that you want to make sure is an empowering and positive. So if it becomes stressful, you don't want it to become a negative situation. So now let's talk about the legal and financial documents that you can use to, kind of balance that peace of mind, confidence, make sure all of your plans and assets are in place. So the first place you want to start is to look at the income and spending. You're going to the cash in and cash out. So essentially, you want to make a list of all of the places that they're bringing in income. So whether that's, a retirement or pension, social security, any sort of investments coming in, and then the cash out as well. So all of your expenses, utility bills are huge, subscriptions, medical costs, medications. You can also see, especially when you're talking about planning for future expenses, see if there's places to cut back on spending so then you can save up for those maybe future expenses and kind of just build up that nest egg for unexpected care costs. The next thing you want to do is just take an inventory of all assets and debts. So, assets are anything that has value, car, house, bank account, stock, retirement account, even like insurance policies, that kind of thing is good to take note of. And then debt as well. So, if there's a mortgage or loans or credit cards, just listing all of those down as well as where they are located can be a really helpful guide, especially if something unexpected happens or if you have to take over the payments on those debts. It'll be a lot easier for you to, locate where they are and what payment amounts it is, that kind of thing. The next thing is identifying the cost of care. So, ongoing medical treatment, prescription drugs, personal care supplies, adult day services, in home care services, medications, full-time residential care services. All of these things, might not be something that is needed right in the moment, but by identifying potential costs into the future, you're going to be able to have a better idea of how to plan for that and save, as well as utilizing like resources both within the community, like the Quad A or the Alzheimer's Association, or maybe another community organization. They'll have, maybe resources for this. I know specifically the Alzheimer's Association does have a hotline as well as a fantastic resource of a lot of different like printable lists, resources that will talk about these expenses. So definitely check that out if you're in need of just kind of looking at the expense side of things from the caregiving side. Lastly, you're going to want to make a plan for ongoing financial responsibilities. So, who is going to pay the bills, arranging for benefit claims, making investment decisions, preparing tax returns is a big one because that's not, an ongoing thing. It's just like a once a year. So making sure you have a plan in place and maybe they already work with someone or maybe you work with someone. So as a caretaker, it would be easier for you to take over, especially with dealing with the memory loss side of things, that paying bills, getting things set up on auto pay, that can be really helpful, or getting electronic statements. So the person with memory loss is not receiving those bills and getting confused over, if something needs to be paid. Sometimes a lot in the bank system or financial system at the credit union, we do see a lot of individuals that will be making double payments for like utilities because they see a bill and then they pay it, but they forgot it was on auto pay or they send two checks. So just those e-statements can kind of help with that confusion piece if that's something that they're experiencing. Also, for organizing finances. So here is a good list of this. Again, I have resources that I will send out with like an actual or another list that lists all of these things, but you can feel free to take a snip of this or you can access this again in the recording as well. But bank and brokerage statements, account information like the numbers and even contact information of the people that work at these institutions can be really helpful, especially when, kind of combating like that fraud piece, which we're going to get to in a couple of slides. Lists of expenses and companies, all information for the credit and debt, mortgages, insurance policies, and then contact information, of course, for financial and medical professionals. And you can list this too in a number of different ways. You can have a dedicated folder to it. If you are a paper person, you can have and there's also even online services that are really affordable now to host this securely that we will get to as well. I also did want to go all of the popular terms in legal planning. I do have to note that this is not intended as legal advice, and if you have specific estate questions, please seek the advice of an estate attorney. But that said, I did want to kind of talk about the difference between a power of attorney and its limitations versus where an executor of estate would be helpful. So, for a power of attorney, this is typically a trusted family member or friend designated to make decisions for the individual. And this can be extremely helpful, obviously, in the medical care aspect, but also that financial management. You can access their bank accounts, you can maintain all of their finances, you can get and receive information. It can also be really helpful for your financial institution well, I guess their financial institution, since power of attorney would have authority to be called if there was any weird activities on the account, which we'll kind of talk about like the red flags here in another couple of slides. But having a trusted contact that your bank professional, either the teller or um, banker, they can like call you if they see weird withdrawals coming out of the account or the individual went into the branch and is making kind of a weird request. But I also must note that power of attorney is only valid while someone is living. So once the person passes, this power of attorney is no longer valid and you will no longer be able to act funds in any bank account. And this can be stressful, especially when you are planning funeral costs or trying to manage like the social security side of things, income, getting things paid, while you're finishing up with the financial aspects and the estate situation. But that is where the executor of a state would come into play, where this is a person legally appointed to manage a deceased individual's estate. So their job is to ensure that the will is carried out and assets are distributing according to that individual's wishes. And they would then be able to continue to get information off of those financial accounts then. Um, I'll also talk about a will and a trust. So, a will is just a legal document that outlines an individual's wishes of how they want their assets and property distributed after they pass away. But it's not as encompassing. A lot of times, you're still going to have to go through the probate process. And a trust is kind of a good way to eliminate that probate. It offers more privacy. The named trustees are able to continue to manage the trust, so you don't have to worry about like not having access, like in a power of attorney situation. And a lot of these can be good to double up on too. If you are a power of attorney, it doesn't mean that you can't have a trust and vice versa. But essentially, the trust is the legal document that gives trustees the legal authority to make decisions about money or property within the trust. And it states who will receive all assets, money, property after the grantor or person who creates the trust passes away. A lot of times that this is like more encompassing and really, really helpful. Again, if you are looking for more privacy, if you have a more complicated estate that you're dealing with, because it'll eliminate that probate process. Now let's get into the fraud and elder abuse prevention, because this is a very important topic that we see. And of course, I do want to note that fraud can impact any individual at any time. So it's about, offering empowerment for the older adults, but also, making sure that their finances are protected. This is kind of a crazy statistic, but according to the Alzheimer's Association, on average, they can lose up almost $40,000 each year as a result of financial abuse, fraud, and scams. So that is quite a lot of money. And again, they are targeted more, or older adults are targeted more just because of, maybe their limited experience with tech or things like this, but it really can happen to everyone of all ages. And it's something that, anyone can fall for really easily. The second, actually, most targeted group is the 24 to 32-year-olds. So that kind of just showcases that this is like something that everyone should be aware of. But that said, here are some red flags that people might be having problems with money. Not necessarily a like problem in relating to fraud or financial abuse, but this is definitely red flags to keep an eye out on, and also potentially indicators of that. So having these conversations is especially important if you see any of these red flags. So unopened bills, utilities get shut off, unusual or large purchases. Sometimes people will make multiple of this or purchase multiple of the same item or just random things that they don't seemingly need. The donations aspect is something that is definitely something on. I know giving, and when people call them, it can be feel like the nice thing to do is donate some money. But not only it does this open up the door to donating to an illegitimate company, but it can also cause them to give up account information and lead to a bigger issue over time, or multiple fraudulent withdrawals from the account. And then that last one is that missing money, unexplained bank withdrawals. We see this a lot, um, with the older adults. Maybe they are falling for a scam and they're wanting to wire money, which that is not, something they've ever done in the past. So it raises that red flag. and financial abuse and dementia. So
Hey, Sam.
for people dealing with memory loss, it can be a lot, you know, easy of financial abuse. It can occur in any setting. Yeah.
Um, you might want to turn off your camera.
Oh, is it glitching?
Yep, the audio is just kind of glitching for
Thank
us.
you for letting me know. Here, I'll stop my video. Is this a little bit better?
Yep, we can hear you. I'll let you know if it glitches again. But
Awesome.
hopefully this should
Thank you
fix it.
so
Thanks so
much.
much.
Hopefully, yeah. That snowstorm is really doing a number in northern Minnesota. But yes, okay. So we're talking about the impacts that memory loss can have and making it a greater likelihood or a greater risk of becoming victims of abuse. They may not remember, they may not report the abuse, and they may just struggle in making sound financial decisions. Not to say that they aren't, they don't have, that experience with money, but when you're dealing with memory loss, it can be hard to, even remember if you paid that bill, like that example from before. So definitely just a bigger thing as a caretaker to keep in mind. And these are a lot of great ways to reduce that risk of abuse and fraud. A lot of times we'll see people lowering limits on credit cards. That is big, especially these days. I mean, credit card limits can kind of be insane. I've seen, anywhere from like 30 to $40,000 limits, especially as an older adult. They might have had great credit throughout their whole lives, and so they have those large limits, but that also makes them more susceptible to fraud. And if that's not necessary at this point, lowering that spending limit can be really helpful. I also recommend creating a separate account for recreational spending. And this is a great thing just in general. I do see a lot of people keep a lot of money in their checking account, but I mean, there's no dividends on that. There's no really benefit to keeping a large amount in a checking account. And this way, it just kind of lowers our, um, either your monthly expenses or your recreational spending, that the majority of your assets are protected, and it won't be a huge deal if that account needs to be closed due to a fraudulent transaction and reopened, or a much lower risk there. Again, we talked about this a couple of times in the slides, but auto pay for bills can be really helpful, especially as a caretaker. You already have so much to think about and have on your plate that, setting it all up on auto pay just creates that peace of mind that they are getting done and it's not something that you have to manually do and worry about. Also, setting up not automatic notifications for withdrawals or large charges. So, if you either are a joint or a power of attorney on account, a lot of times in mobile banking, they'll give you a ability to get notified anytime there are things coming out of that account, or whenever there's large withdrawals coming out of the account. So that can be really helpful to catch, and you can have that conversation with your loved one, like, oh, what did you spend this money on, or where is that going? Or catch a fraudulent charge come through so you can flag it for fraud as soon as possible. You can also, again, request those electronic bank and credit card statements and sign up for the do not call at list at donotcall.gov. So this one's just a good one to reduce the risk of telemarketers or spam callers. I know phone companies are trying to push out updates all the time to get this under control. And I know when we're talking about fraud, like it can be really scary, especially with AI now being able to spoof like phone numbers and names and even mimic voices. So, just kind of having that conversation of like, if someone calls you to ask for money or personal information, do not give that to them. Just hang up. And if you think that it might be legitimate, call the person back at the number that you normally would and trust. So, as with everything, establishing backup plans is really important to just ensure that, you have that peace of mind that if anything goes awry or unexpected happens, there is another plan in place. So consider assigning responsibilities to more than one person. I know this is going to be dependent on your individual situation, but it can really take a lot of stress off the caretaker's plate when they know that they have people that are supporting them. Um, this can mean too, even if you are the primary person, having a friend or family member be a backup for you just to give you that peace of mind that, again, if something were to happen to you, everything would still be protected and have a plan in place. And same goes for agents or power of attorneys, trustees, that kind of thing. And then keep that up-to-date list of medical information for the person. So any medications, contact informations for the doctor and anyone else involved in the person's care. So that's just kind of something you want to keep updated on that ongoing basis. All right. And lastly, here, we're going to talk about community resources. So, the first one I want to talk about, you might already be familiar with since you are on a Quad A webinar, but Get Your Ducks in a Row or ducksinarowminnesota.org is huge for it's just a great landing page for all sorts of resources when it comes to power of attorney. There's a lot of webinars. I think they're doing another campaign in April with a webinar on April 13th for healthcare directives. So I definitely encourage you guys to check this out because it's a, plethora of information and resources on a lot of the specific things that we talked about, like the power of attorney, for example. The next thing that I want to mention is that we actually just signed up with TrueStage to offer digital estate planning at Northern Communities Credit Union. You do not have to be a member for this resource, which is why I just decided to include it here today because it is a fantastic resource for those of you with straightforward assets. It is a secure and affordable digital vault, so everything can be saved in one place. And, there can be lists, there can be, estate planning documents either that you have and upload to this, or you can create those estate planning documents right there for much cheaper than you would go with through like an estate attorney. Again, you would still want that attorney's advice if you have a complicated estate, but this really streamlines the process for a lot of people. You can list assets, debts, and other important documents all in one place. And I know I mentioned the Alzheimer's Association a number of times, but they are a fantastic resource for anyone that is working or has a loved one that is dealing with dementia or memory loss, or even if you, as the individual, are. They have a 24/7 hotline that I definitely recommend maybe saving in your phone just in case. I know I've heard stories as a community educator of people calling, just completely overwhelmed in the middle of the night and getting the support that they need from this helpline. So definitely know that it's there for you, especially if you get into a situation where you're really overwhelmed or just have a quick question, and you don't have the capacity to do the research on your own. ALZ.org is also another great place to go for resources. They have a number of great lists and research and, just kind of packets for caregivers as well. So lots of support there. They do have a lot of communities, or they have a lot of community presence all over Minnesota. I know that we have a place here in Hermantown, and then they travel all over northern Minnesota to give you support groups, presentations, resources like that. So definitely check them out as well. Uh, these are the documents that I have listed today in a workbook. So it does talk about a lot of what we covered here. There is the avoiding elder abuse and fraud portion, organizing legal plans worksheet, having these conversations about finances, as well as covering those care costs that I believe will be sent out to all attendees with that recording link. And then if you would like to find more resources, there are a ton of them both on the community and national level. So again, the Quad A is huge and helpful in as like a local community resource. There is also a community resource finder right at the top there. Elder Care Locator, law foundation, legal services, that kind of thing. And then, so free financial counseling through NCCU, we partner with LSS to offer free financial counseling. So anyone can access that. And that can be a really great spot for a caregiver, especially if you are overwhelmed or new to managing finances. Someone can go through it directly with you and kind of help come up with a plan of action based on your goals and the individual's goals as well. Uh, a lot of times, an accountant or tax professional can also be helpful. So there's a resource for that. And consumer credit counseling services. So, credit counseling, you can also talk about that when you go through financial counseling as well. But if either yourself or the individual is struggling with a lot of debt, that can be a really good resource for you as well. I know with the medical care system, it can get really, really expensive. The number one cause of bankruptcy is medical debt. So if you have, questions, if you are just drowning in that medical debt and you think bankruptcy might be a good option for you, there is a government link right at the bottom here. That might be a good spot for you to look into. And that was all of the information that I have today. I also, if you have any questions, I think, again, chat will be responding to those. Otherwise, here is all of my contact information. Feel free to get a hold of me. And thank you guys so much. I'll hand it over to Jess so she can kind of finish us up here.
Thanks so much, Sam. I don't see any questions in the chat right now. So we'll go into our closing. Um, Thank you again. This was some really valuable insights, and your expertise on managing finances for caregivers has hopefully provided our community with some actionable takeaways that families can implement right away. The information that you shared about early planning, legal considerations, practical tips for managing someone else's finances will undoubtedly help many families navigate these challenging situations with greater confidence. To all our attendees, we're grateful for your time and engagement today. Your participation has made this session more valuable for everyone. We know how precious your time is, and we don't take it lightly that you chose to spend it with us this morning, especially during, busy times when many of you may be balancing caregiving responsibilities with other commitments. Before we wrap up, I'd like to remind everyone about our upcoming webinars. You can register for these sessions on our website at arrowheadaging.org. And as always, we'll be sending out calendar invites and reminder emails to help you stay connected. Resources and follow-up. Today's recording will be available on our YouTube channel within the next few days. We'll be sending a follow-up email to all registrants with the resources mentioned during today's session. If you have any questions about today's presentation or need additional resources, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. Brenda put my email and her email in the chat earlier. You can reach out to us. We're always looking for ways to better serve our community's learning needs, so please send us your suggestions for future topics and don't forget to fill out that survey that pops up once you close out today. Thank you again for being part of our webinar series. Your commitment to supporting and caring for your loved ones makes a real difference in our communities. We look forward to seeing you at a future session, and until then, wishing you continued strength and success in your caregiving journey. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. There are resources and support available to help you every step of the way.